So welcome to ProfileTree TV, and today I'm very excited to be joined by a guest whose business is absolutely booming in this very strange time that we're going through. So I'm going to hand you over now and let you introduce yourself and tell us all about your business.
Thanks. I'm Rune Sovndahl. I'm the co-founder of Fantastic Services, which is a company that's a franchise for cleaning, handyman, builders, pest control, and most domestic home services. We've been around for 11 years. We started with a mission to make it the easiest place in the world to book any service, and that's where we're at.
Excellent, and thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us today. You see there's a lot of benefits for using online domestic services.
Well, I mean, if you think about it by what we mean online, it's like what we started with was the idea of how do we get availability and pricing up front? So think about like the travel industry, like how now you could see the flight price and you could see the hotel price. And that was my background before that. So I wanted to do the same on services, so to be real-time pricing and have the upfront price before you buy.
Incredible, which, yeah, exactly. Sometimes you don't see that. You're having to pick up the phone and talk to people, and people don't like talking to people anymore.
No. I found that you could make those 3 calls, and I was like, well, and then you ended up someone not turning up, and that was the whole idea behind Fantastic Service, because I needed to get a deposit back, and then I couldn't get them to come on time, and I couldn't arrange it, and one said it's 300, the other said 800. It's like, this is craziness, and that's kind of where we started, and I think we've had a massive success with it so far.
Do you mind just explaining then how the business works? So if I go onto your website, then what as a customer would I do?
Yeah, see, if you go on our website now, what you'll find is you'll type in your address or the area you're in, so we can see what services we serve you in this area. Then when you're in that area, I will say, well, we can do X, Y, Z in that area, because we can't cover all areas right now. It will come, but it's not all areas. But we cover the areas. Then you go and you look at it. You will find pricing, but you'll also find availabilities of getting cheaper prices, because you can choose to do it on Wednesdays instead of the peak time, which is Fridays. Right, so we've got cheaper prices for this stuff here. We've got allocation of jobs to make sure that one of the things we didn't want to do was like the platforms which just has 1,000 cleaners on it or 1,000 something on it. We wanted everyone to be part of it. And that's why we went away from being just a network or a marketplace. We went into becoming a franchise, which was more interesting. And it delivers better quality as far as we can see.
Yes, no, very interesting. So you've an option. So if I wanted someone on the weekend, it might be more expensive. I'm going to pay for that. But if price is a really core focus of what we do or what I'm looking at, then I can get someone off peak.
Yes, and if you want something on Tuesdays, I mean, removals are cheaper on Tuesdays than they are on the weekends, right? Incredible. So it's you can pick that, and then yeah.
I was just going to say, and when you started the business, did you face any challenges?
I mean, this was nearly impossible when we started. I mean, what we found out is that, first of all, everybody who works in that industry and who were working in that industry before were not very tech savvy. I mean, we were there in the early days of, they started having a mobile phone, which is amazing. Before that, they'd have to have their own device and so forth. So we kind of like came in on the right time, and we found that there was no software out there. So we developed from scratch the whole sort of system, the whole operating system that our services run on. And that made us a lot more agile with regards to adding more services on. Now that software can do any service anywhere at any time. So that's what it allows us to now, which is why we can expand on top of that.
And we have, these are domestic services that the people would traditionally think are very hard to transform using digital software, digital media, but you've done that, and I guess you see a big future in this.
Well, I mean, let's see. I've always, since I was a child, I don't know why, but I've always had the idea of technology can solve most of the problems. I've learned now, a couple of 40 years later, we're not going to say exactly how many, but I've learned now that it's a mix of technology where you can and people where it matters, right? So what I found in this industry was, it was one of the biggest challenges we've ever had was, how do we get that to work in a user experience that's okay for the pros to be able to turn up on this stuff here, but also adjusting that to the business. And that's where we found out that Uber in some ways were quite simple compared to the services. Uber is A to B. You go in there and you just, it takes by the mile or by the minute. And here, there's a lot more things in the training. Is it like third floor? Is it fourth floor? Is it like the window? Is it, you know? So what we found out is we had to kind of like create a uber complex Uber model. And that's what we did, yeah.
Amazing. And do you think that domestic services, if they don't move online and don't embrace technology, that they're going to be in trouble in the future?
See, I think especially now, I mean, what it's managed us to do with our prices, instead of having to raise prices, and now potentially, you know, we hope we can go out with some really competitive prices post the lockdown and so forth. If we hadn't gone online and we hadn't done it this way, I don't think we'd be able to have the efficiency to do it. So I think that it's very crucial to have software that minimizes the cost, but also allows you to become flexible. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges now. So whether they'll disappear, probably not, but you'd probably be outpriced, because what happens is we're looking at a recession coming in. What happens in recession was when we started. It becomes a price war for a little while. And if you're not competitive, if you don't have the availability, if you don't have this, you're not going to take the bookings. So you've got to find another way of doing it. So I'd say that, you know, I don't like saying anybody will go out of it and that's the only way, but I'd say that it's going to be very hard competing without being completely switched on online. I mean, it's going to be very hard to allocate and to cross-check and to manage invoices and everything else. It's going to be very hard.
When you're talking through, you know, your expectations of what is likely to happen, it sounds like you've been, you know, in business for a long time and you know what to expect, the ups and downs. We're in a strange time at the moment, but business is good, and or how are you finding it, up and down?
Well, business is up and down. I mean, we've got some services that are doing better than others. I mean, obviously, domestic cleaning got hit hard in the sense of that customers were less likely to have people at the home, which I understand, despite that after several talks with the government, it's been okayed. But that doesn't mean that the government is going to like, oh yeah, you can now have your cleaner at home. So we're going to have to find a way of doing that without, you know, trying to push, because I don't want anybody at risk, right? We don't want the cleaners, we don't want anybody at risk. So that's one thing. The other thing was that we launched, we took learnings from our pest control service, and we took learnings from our deep cleaning service and our hospital cleaning service, and created a new service, which was antiviral sanitation, which is a very deep clean, which allows us to do with an antiviral kit that does the fogging, which is normally used for pest control. So we found out that that way it works, and that's the best way to distribute this. So it goes into every crevice, and everything else is like a steam clean with antiviral agents. That's become a business on its own, and we're seeing offices ordering it now. So some of the things are good, some of the things are not good. I mean, it's also a tricky part, because there's a lot of confusion about it. But you know, that's where we're at. You know, it's about being business for that long. I mean, we started in a recession. I mean, we started because a bank collapsed in 2008 and said, well, we got to go consumer here, and we got to change this stuff so we have the interface, and we got to be the most cost efficient to book with, and we got to have the right prices. So yeah, I think we're ready for whatever it brings now. I think the ones who will come out of this are going to be very strong companies, because they've learned a lot.
And when we look at your business online and do some Google searches, we actually find your company pops up quite a lot, and how we found you, which is a really good sign. So you've obviously invested in digital marketing. You really believe that that's the way forward.
I mean, I'm a true believer. Look, I have a strange last name, right? Which is how I found out this thing that later became called SEO. Right, so I even used to be international head of SEO in another company before I became an SEO. So I am converted like nobody else on digital. I mean, we answer the phones because of one thing, and that's in our belief, right? It's that it's part of the service. It's part of the service to be able to answer the phone and to deliver it for the service. But we will do technology where we can. And then it's people where it matters, right? And the people that matters is like, if something goes into a problem, it has to be solved with this. It doesn't help pinging 200 emails back and forth. No, we can deal with that, and we can talk to the people who are out doing it, and we can do this stuff here. But other than that, we're truly running on digital, and and firm believers. That's why, I mean, my background is in digital marketing as well. So yeah, I'm 100% sold on digital there.
I'm not surprised, actually, in fairness, when I've seen the site and how your profiles appear online. So definitely a credit to you. But it's amazing, again, that you've taken the offline and online, the human and the digital, and merged it together, and you realize how important that is, because so many companies don't realize that.
See, I think we started from a need. I mean, you've got to be, one thing that's really curious about us and this stuff is, like, we're bootstrapped, right? Which means we started on zero. I think we had a couple of £1,000 each, me and Anton, who's my business partner, and we're completely founded like that. So we started with the SEO, we started with the online, we started with this. Then we found out that, you know, anybody can raise 40 million and do a lot of marketing, but is that going to translate into becoming a good business? And a good business, in our eyes, is something we call 360 degrees happiness, which is our employees, which is our partners, which is our franchisees and our customers, and then ourselves. So that's what we believe is a good business. And yes, the profit comes in there, because without that, you know, nothing runs around. But it's been very clear that, you know, we've been one of the very few who started from the ground up with nothing, and then, despite others raising enormous amounts of money, never even made it to break even. And I think that pragmatical thing about what it is we do at the end, which is serving a customer. You always got to remember that whether you're digital or not digital, whether you're analog or not analog, at the end of the day, you've got to solve the problem, right? And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's like, we love this digital, everything should go on the app. I'd love all our customers to go on the app because it's a lot easier and it's a lot more effective. But I understand that it's not for everyone. It's one of the things I learned 20 years ago when I did the first sort of cinema bookings online, that there were still going to be people who were calling in.
Very interesting. And you're innovating as well. So this new service that you're offering, that you're going into basically Steam companies then, is that, and premises, is that the concept?
Yeah, it's antiviral cleaning, which is a way of sterilizing areas, whether there's been an infected person, or I think it's right now, when you're talking about the removals, we used to do, or let's say we're probably the biggest end of tenancy cleaning company there is with regards to serving all the property agents. So what we estimate is that that's also going to be a concern for people. Is like, if I'm moving into a new place, or if I'm renting a new place, has it been sterilized? You know, one thing is that it's been cleaned, but has it been sterilized? I think one of the things that I've always seen and always known is like hygiene and cleaning is very important. But I think now that the greater population is getting a bigger view of how much it matters whether you're using the right chemicals or not. But I'd say it's always been a case of this stuff here. You've got to keep your environment clean to certain, you know, you can't disinfect the world, which is not the purpose of the world. But the idea of keeping certain things clean and keeping this clean, it also maintains better and everything else. It's a nicer environment. Plus you avoid asthma. There's a 1.5 million other things like you don't. And I think that this sort of idea about washing your hands, which is basically not you're really asking us to washing your hands more than you regularly would actually, because you should actually wash them 8, 9, 10 times a day. But now that we're being reminded about it, we do it, right? So that's a big difference.
So no, and your expectation is this, what's happened now is going to totally change how we view cleaning and sterilization and everything else?
I think it's going to change a lot. I mean, one of the things that we're working a lot on is like duct cleaning and new innovations with UV lights and putting certain things into our chemicals, making sure that there's a UV light inside the carpet cleaning machine and so forth. So in order to just do that little extra bit, I think that the biggest change is going to be about people's understanding of how much hygiene and regular cleaning means. I think that's what's the biggest thing. I mean, if you think about it, supermarket trolleys, I mean, you know, how often were they wiped before? I mean, it's also, the world is not that fragile. We've got X, Y, Z viruses. The world is not that fragile. I mean, it's sustained this many million years. You know, humans have been around for a while. But at the end of the day, the change in how people perceive hygiene and the importance of it is changing. Yes.
Very good. And you had an NHS campaign as well. You'd mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's something that was very close to our heart, because one of the things is that we go out and I mean, all of us has been working, you know, whether from home and so forth. And we saw that there was a lot of NHS workers who didn't have the time to come home. So what we said was, they could come home to a clean house to see the kids and the stuff here when they came home. So we offered them free cleans. We offered everything we could in order to help. But it was also a way of getting our cleaners reactivated and going out there again, because they also needed to be out there. So it was like, as I said, it's part of our 360. So I think we'll always do that. And you'll see a lot from us in the next couple of months, what we're doing. I mean, we've been talking to the government about certain things, about the implications of bringing in how Britain is going to open again and so forth. And we've been involved in the steering committee for that with the Secretary of State for businesses and how are we opening again, how are we and what are we doing and what step are we taking first. So I've been very, very involved in that. So I'm not going to disclose any of it. I know there's been leaked some documents, but I'm not going to do that. But it's let's say that there are going to be certain precautions and guidelines taken into place that needs to be done.
It's a very tough time for government, for business owners, for the general population at the moment.
I mean, I think it's the toughest time, but it's also what surprised me. It showed how fragile some businesses are. It's like you always had these rules about, you've got to keep this in the bank, you've got to keep this and this. And it shows now how many and who has done the right things and the stuff here. I mean, it really reads out a couple of things. I think but this is only the beginning, right? I think what's going to come in 6 months and in 12 months from now is going to be the real thing, because this is not the virus that's the problem. It's the economy, I think.
Very interesting.
So I think that's going to be the biggest one. When we'll see whether the government will respond to some of the measures we're taking and some of the things we're suggesting to them. We'll see whether they respond to that, because if they do that, there's certain things that could be a driver for all businesses and so forth. So I'm becoming very active in this now.
No, it's great. It's great to hear that the government's actually going out and talking to business leaders who are really in the trenches, and actually you're able to feedback and directly communicate.
I've been very impressed. I've been very impressed with the government on this one here. I mean, not generally, but I mean, the last bit I've been doing for the last month here, I've been quite impressed with what they're doing and how much they actually go into the depth of businesses compared to some other countries that we're also operating in. Like they're going in and analyzing, saying like, well, is that more dangerous than this if you do it X, Y, Z this way? And they really have gone down that. Yes, they've said, you've got to look after your health and safety because it's still new. We don't really know how it transmits, but they have been down to the nitty gritty of everything from online booking of this to this. And with each of our services, like, okay, gardening is fine, handyman is fine, plumbing is fine, domestic cleaner is fine. If you go for the walk or go to the supermarket while the cleaner is there, everything is fine. So, and they've said that's okay. Right? And they've said, like, if you can't work from home, you should go to work. You should try to avoid the tube. They've been very clear about that. But it's not so easy to understand but when you go through the 50-page document that we helped draft up, then it gets more clear. It gets like, okay, I really have to read that. So, like, can I actually move house? Yes, you can. Right? So our removals was kept open. We took massive extra security guards and had the PPE equipment with us. We had hand sanitizers and everything else. But if you're in the middle of a move, you can't stop, right? I mean, it's like you're changing hands and stuff here. Sorry, but there are properties changing hands all the time. So we've had a lot of moves because we said, okay, well, we're going to be careful in what we do. And we're going to be, the guys who are in the car is the same two guys always. It's never just like one random guy on this stuff here. So they know each other, and they generally work together and work together for that long. So they would have been, they're like family, right? So it's a different story. It's not just random people in a van, and it's not. So I think that was important, and we kept everything we could open, but also made sure that if anybody didn't feel safe, they were free to say no and not do it. So yeah.
Incredible. And have you found that you or your business has had to do major changes or implement major adaptations to how you operate because of this current pandemic?
I mean, the wearing a mask has been one, but also that, some of the end of tenancy stuff, instead of being teams of 3, it's now teams of 2. Those kind of things have been changed. So yes, there's been massive changes. I mean, also we have a call center, where everybody had to work from home. Luckily, a call center is in an area where electricity wasn't very good. So we'd actually prepared for this and made sure that everybody had broadband at home. So when it happened, it was like within 2 days, everybody was working from home. So we had 200 people working from home within 2 days. And it was like, okay, so what's the problem here? And it was like, I didn't even have to panic about it because we'd done it twice before, because they had to do some government maintenance on something and on the electricity. Okay, so the call center shuts down for 2 days. Let's work from home for those 2 days. So that's been okay. I mean, but I think all of us are working now like this on Zoom. That's a different story.
Crazy days. No, this is it. So what's next? What's the future? Open the crystal ball and tell me what you think is going to happen over the next couple of months and years for the economy, I guess, yourself, and of course, Fantastic Services.
I mean, what's going to happen a lot is, and that's why we've opened this. We've opened now on the Fantastic Academy. We've opened up training. I mean, what my number one concern globally is that the number of unemployed people. And what we've seen is with unemployment before, when it was the last recession, is that's the time when a good starting job is cleaning, a good starting job to get back into track, because it's like if you're unemployed for too long, no matter what you do, you just got to have something to do. So that was a good starting job. So what we've done is we've opened up on Fantastic Academy, we opened up the training. I think we're almost giving it away now. The whole training of how to start a cleaning business or a domestic cleaning business, we're giving that away. We have expanded the number of franchisees that we're opening up, which means that if you want to get out of, your employer's grasp and stuff here and want to become self-employed, then we are now opening so that you can buy a level above, which means that you kind of own an area and so forth. So we've expanded that. What I see is that the economy is going to be very hard on prices. I think that confidence and consumer confidence is going to take a while to come back. It's not just about opening. I happen to be in a country right now where they opened a week ago, and it's only now that the cafes are full, right? So it happens, but it takes that stuff, and they're not full. They're like, there's four chairs outside, and that's what full means, right? But that's all there is, right? So everyone is working, and they've got 3 people serving those 4 people. So, but that's just the beginning of it. I think that there's going to be a lot of complications of this, mainly based on the economy. I also think that the thing of working from home, what we've seen of offices removals and so forth, of where they don't expect to get back to work, they don't expect to get back to the office in the near future. So we've seen, okay, well, we're moving out. This is our chairs. Let's go. So, but there's always resilience. It's like, and if you always look at it, the best growth comes just after a recession, right? But you've got to adjust and say, I'm at level 0 now again. Every day is a new day. And that's how we're thinking. So it's like, we just have to reinvent based around that. But, structurally, we're prepared for that. And financially, we're prepared for it. And I think that we've already got a lot of the basis for doing this stuff here. But we had to put the startup hat on again and just think like a startup again and say like, well, the plane is falling out of the sky. I got to build the plane and make my parachute and everything else and got to land it safely, right? So we just switched that mentality back on and said like, well, okay, well, let's start from there. So we've built video calling features that we're now selling so that, you can do video surveys. The stuff here is coming out in our app. So we're going to sell that to everybody else. It's going to be on a license. It's going to be very simple. Super little simple app that allows you to do video surveys beforehand and this stuff without having to share your phone numbers or FaceTime or God knows what. So we've also developed a number of software things that comes into place for service industries. So yeah, I mean, you just got to put your startup hat on again and get ready. I mean, it's like, I don't like the word staying alert, because I think you should always be alert. I think, I think what you should do is you should keep an open mind and have energy.
Right. No, very good advice. And my last question, you mentioned franchise a few times. Obviously, franchise is a big part of your business. Wouldn't mind giving us a little insight into what that looks like for your company?
See, I was not the biggest fan of franchising in the beginning. And I because I didn't really understand franchising. So I wasn't a big fan of franchising. So my sort of understanding of franchising changed gradually over time. And it's when I understood that franchising is being in business for yourself, but not by yourself, is when I started seeing that actually works. because the idea of operating a unit, right? You want to be in charge of your unit. What I say, a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs and want to invest in this stuff, and they want to be their own bosses and said, I want to work X hours, I don't want to work so and so forth, or I'm ready to work 90 hours a week. I'm ready to nail this down for 5 years and do all the things that it takes. But you don't necessarily get the results from that when you're working as an employee. In a franchise, you know, it takes away, the statistics are that franchise businesses are more likely to succeed than normal businesses. And the reason being is that most businesses, if you think about it, spends time on innovation, marketing, they spend the time on coming up with the right product market fit. They get lost in all the details of how does this stuff here. When you get a franchise, you get like this box with a training manual, and then you get some partners who's been through it, and they've been through it 110 times before with 110 other franchisees, and they've done all the mistakes. So you save on all the mistakes. And that's why it's more likely, once you've got a model that works, that it's replicable, right? And that's why I said, like, yes, we could take more profits if we were like running the whole thing. But what we found out in the service industry is that taking ownership of your unit and taking ownership of your franchise means that you also deliver better quality, because it's the returning customers that comes back. So it met the goal that I wanted, which was to deliver services that people love, right? You know, and that was the goal, easiest place to be booking. And then I said, how do I deliver that quality? And we saw that I'm thinking about open marketplace versus a controlled marketplace. And the franchise is a controlled marketplace with curation, with quality control, with vetted partners, with everything else, rather than the other way. It meant a little bit slower growth, but that growth was taken back by the number of customers staying, you know. So I think that it's been very powerful. But I wasn't a fan of franchising when it began, and I was like, when you said the word franchising, I was like, well, what do you mean? This is something from the 80s or 70s, or. But when I understood it, and I said we also changed a few things in franchising, but when I understood it, I was like, okay, that works. You know, you get this box, you get this training, you get this stuff here. 110 other people have done it before. I go straight in. I can do it again. Okay. You know, you've taken away my headaches, and I can just go in to do my work. Because otherwise you have to reinvent every single thing.
That's very true, yes. And it's a long, hard journey, a lonely one as well sometimes. So definitely know the advantages and disadvantages of that. Thank you again for taking time out and sharing your business with us and what you're doing. If anyone wants to check out what the business is at and the innovations that you're bringing to the market, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, fantasticservices.com is the best place to see it, but also, you know, following me on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on Facebook is also worth it, because I publish a lot of the things there. As you can tell, I'm quite open about talking about it, because I think it's an exciting journey, and I think it's worth sharing about it, because at the end of the day, that's the legacy we leave, right? It's the story, but it's also the learning, because I'm an entrepreneur myself. I started from zero, so I also go through these things of what the journey is. So I'm always with it. The same with the franchisees. I understand it from the beginning of where should I start with the flyer? Should I start with this? Should I start with that? Right? So I was there, you know, I was out there handing them out the flyers myself, you know, the first year, you know, every single time on the way home from work and back to work and this stuff here, flyer. So it doesn't stop, right? So, and that's what interests me. So I'm always happy to talk and work with entrepreneurs and so forth. And now you can see my phone keeps ringing.
That's a good sign. Someone wants to talk to you about business. But again, I'll leave you alone and let you get the call. And again, thank you very much for taking time out today and sharing with us what you're doing and what the future looks like. So really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent. And thank you for watching. Please do check the links below. Visit fantasticservices.com and check out the website, and do connect with Rune on his social media, because as you see there, lots of nuggets of advice and help, and interesting to see what's happening. Again, if you like the video, do share it on social media, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you again.